How did I get in this room? Another episode for you guys. Thank you for being here. And we have a special guest because you have a connection to our guest this week.
I do. In fact, okay, this is super exciting. It's always exciting, right? We get the personal side of all these incredible musicians and film producers and TMs and such. But this is big time for me because it's one of my high school besties. So shout out to Kincaid. This is a Kincaid alum, class of 98. We are owning our age. Don't do the math. Nobody does math
It's
here.
a very Houston, Texas-centric thing if you're watching this.
Love the purple and shout out to the purple and gold. It's Katherine Harper, one of my favorite film producers ever. It's crazy. I knew she was going to be a creative talent ever since 8th grade. She was a writer. She always had this artist. She was always drawing.
I love that. I love people that are like, I know what I want to do. This is the dream.
Yeah.
And I'm going to follow it.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
And she went for it. And look, she's crushing it now. She has these. So I wanted to get it correct.
So when you were there in school and you guys knew each other, was she part of drama or
we're always part of drama, right? We've been to school together.
Well,
and
you
we're
know what
girls.
I mean? Where she's involved in.
The only drama we like is
I'm
in
just
our
stepping out of
lashes.
this right now.
It's only in our lashes.
Time for me to go.
Catherine and I had no drama. But we were both, she focused.
Was she involved in
stage
presentations?
She wasn't part of the theater.
Oh, that's what I'm asking.
She wasn't changing
that's drama.
the light things on the. You know what I'm talking about, the colors on the lights. But she was an incredible writer. And in fact, she's Dallas-based, and she had this killer blog about Dallas, just Dallas social life for a while before she was a producer. And people she had a huge following.
That's
she
amazing.
Wrote it anonymously. I mean, all of us actually knew that she was writing it. But she's just very insightful, highly emotionally intelligent. Like myself. Are you?
No. No. All right.
Without
introduce this, please.
Okay. Without further ado, Katherine Harper. Here you go.
I also try very, very hard not to give any preferential investing terms to different people within a film. I think that also makes it harder to keep everyone in a team mentality. There's certain exceptions, like if someone comes in and gives you the ability to do something really, really huge. But overall, I prefer to have it where everyone is on the same playing field, no matter what you've contributed within certain ranges, and then keep everyone realizing that we all succeed at the same time if the film does well.
That's what makes you amazing. I know this about you. Okay, so speaking of time, how much time does it take to make a movie?
That also is a good question that varies quite a bit. So an animated film, for example, The Book of Life was a film also that I worked on at Real Effects. We ended up getting a Golden Globe nomination for that. And it was a fully animated, that was actually one of the coolest things ever, was getting to go to the Golden Globe ceremony with the director, Jorge, and producers and small group of us from Real Effects against these huge, huge, huge films from DreamWorks and all sorts of studios that were exponentially more expensive than ours. But animated films generally take a lot longer. So 5 or 6 years, 7 years, that's not at all unheard of, because if you think about it, everything in an animated film has to be made from scratch. If there's a leaf, that style of the leaf has to be created and designed and improved. And then the tree that it sits on, the same thing. Nothing is in camera, everything is created from scratch. And that's only the visuals, let alone the story that informs the visuals. So 5 to 7 years maybe on an animated film. And even the indie animated films that we were making 10 plus years ago, a low budget in those days was a $55 million film. The Pixars and DreamWorks were making their animated films for probably triple that, $150 plus million. On the indie film side, it just very much depends. Sister Amy, we made start to finish everything, and it was out within about a 2-year period. And that was shooting, releasing it. We finished shooting it and did post-production, got into Sundance, and then the next January it was out, right? It was out in the world. And Marissa had started Unknown Country, by contrast, as a photography project years ago. And the photos informed this story. And then the story evolved as she started thinking about being a woman and making these long road trips to visit her husband, who was in South Dakota at the time. And then that evolved into meeting Lainey Bearkiller, who suggested that, what if the main character was Native? Because that was something that she could also identify with, was feeling alone on the road as a woman. And then that evolved into some test shoots, and then that evolved into the Unknown Country. So, I mean, gosh, all start to finish, like that was, I would say, probably 6 years. So not that different, but it was a very different process. Whereas like animated films are almost in more active production. A short film,
you brought up the being a woman, right? And so I wanted to ask you about working as a female producer in a very male dominated industry that has been critiqued for being male dominated. How do you assert yourself?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because on one hand, I think the greatest gift that my parents could have given me, other than, a wonderful education and sort of a curiosity about the world, is that I've never even considered that there was something that I couldn't do because I was a woman, right? And things
I love that. I love that.
It's never even crossed my mind, but things obviously have happened in working situations and otherwise, which I would say were uncool, unkind, but it's not just always been, a sketchy guy or a man doing things. Like, there have been things that have happened, but for me, I've just never allowed that to stray my focus at all. And for the most part, the men that I've worked with, Scott, the executives at Real Effects, at Charlie Tango, that was owned and run by a woman and a man, have been beyond supportive and protective of me as a young person in the industry. So it's not always the negative that you hear, but I try very, very hard to work. Like, I have a no assholes policy. The minute someone is an asshole, they're out for sure. And I think that you just really have to stick to your gut. I mean, as a woman, I just try to behave as a good person and like let that be the driving force and not care. And I do hope that someday there is a shift back to being just like a producer. The term producer is as obviously a female as it could be a male, right? So like, we don't have the need to say, female producer, like it's a more accomplished thing, because truly, some of the best and most talented producers I know are women. And I think that anyone in the industry that's worked for a long time feels that way. But I've been really lucky. I've had good people around me and good people behind me, and people who share the same philosophy that nothing is worth compromising your values or your sort of red lines. And if anyone tries to make you move on from the project, and it's a different, you find a different group.
Red lines equal red flags. And
yeah.
Even circus, these aren't your monkeys.
Exactly. Like the red flags, I think, are for your 30s. And then when you're 40s, you just go with pink flags. Even the slightest amount of like, ooh, I don't like this. Bye.
Right.
They get to walk the plank.
Walk it, see where that leads.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about the festivals. Do you enjoy going to these festivals? From the outside, it looks so glam. Tell us what that feels like when you go.
It is amazing and honestly a huge honor. And they are all very different. And I think that as a very novice filmmaker years ago, I had no idea about the sort of identities and personalities of different film festivals. Now I think like, oh, this project would really feel right for this festival, or that project would really maybe appeal to this programming director. They might really get it in a different way because you live and learn and grow. But they're like, from the earliest days where we did like the Dallas International Film Festival, who's always been a huge supporter of all of the projects that I've worked on, to Telluride, which is incredible. It's in beautiful Colorado. You can't beat it. Sundance was obviously like a pivotal point in my career, and such an honor to be there. But it's an honor no matter what, because you can be disappointed if your film doesn't get into something. And all of our films have been rejected from a million things too, right? Like, it's rejection is part of it. But so many people, you can't be blind to the idea that your struggle and your hard work is unique. There are indie film producers all over this country that are working every day equally as hard as you are to get your film in. And whether it resonates or not can be a very multi-factored process. But if it's not the right fit for you, then it's kind of like the group of people you're working with. For me, then it's like, let's move on and find something that does, because you don't want to be forcing your film in a place where someone doesn't really want it. That plays out negatively usually. And we've been lucky that like every festival we've had has been very supportive and wonderful to work with our films being there. And it is very stressful because there's so much going on. You go into your premiere, you've worked with your publicist to set up ideally screenings and things like that. And then you just wait and stare at your phone for the reviews to post. And it's so terrifying because you're just hoping and hoping that the world will respond to your film and the journalists will see the things that you saw in it that were wonderful. But you can't, people are independent thinkers and you can't force anything. So until you start to see those reviews, you're really just like white knuckling it and hoping for the best. But we've also been lucky to have like an incredible publicity team, especially with Unknown Country and Jazzy and the form of 42 West. And like, they are also a huge part of the film pipeline that people, I was a marketing and PR person before I was a producer. So I know how much of a difference those people make and can change the path of the film by helping you deliver the message of the film and not just the content in the right way. So that's, I think, it's an end piece, but it's an equally important piece as almost any of the other big pieces of the project.
Sure. How many films do you work on at a time? And the larger that number gets, does that make that more difficult for you to focus?
Yeah, I try to kind of stagger them. I would say like 3 to 4 is probably a good number. And for example, right now I have one script that was written for me years ago by the same director, writer duo, Sam Buck and Marie Schlingman, that I worked on my Sundance film with and the Telluride film with. I knew that I wasn't ready to make that film when they wrote it for me, but the script was amazing. Like, I got all the feels. So I've just put it in a drawer. And as the years have gone by and I've made bigger projects, I am getting closer to bringing that out. So like, that's a project that I think about, but it's not I'm not actively working on it. Right now I have 3 that I'm actively working on. And then, the life of a film, the tale of a film is years after the release. And so, I'll still be working on The Unknown Country with the rest of the team for, all of the things. We've just released a soundtrack. Like, there are all sorts of cool things still happening with that, even, a year after its theatrical release and streaming release. And so you hope that you get to continue to work on them for a while after. Where it gets hard is if you're in production and needing to be on sets at the same time. That's really hard to do. But other than that, you kind of just like shift it around. And if I have a day that's heavy on one film, then the next day I'll try and focus more on the other film. And luckily, all of the people I work with have the same philosophy. They're working on a bunch of projects and are very understanding of like, hey, this week, can you help me out? I'm going to be out of pocket. I'm going to be on set. Will you respond if they like, I'm not going to be in the same time zone. And everyone knows that just happens. And, that's why you have a good team. So people can divide and conquer.
Yeah. And conquering is always, I guess, like a theme in your world. I'm just trying to understand the glam of going to the Golden Globes.
Well, that was an
Tell
incredible.
me what did you do the red carpet? Were you?
Yeah, so we did part of the red carpet a little more than we should, because the way the Globes work is that certain people, there are all these parties that go on, and then there's the actual ceremony. And so although we didn't have tickets to the ceremony as the publicist for one of our execs that did. And there was, I think, a group of 6 of us that went. And again, you're just walking around and Julianne Moore's right there. And, you know, it's pretty amazing to see all these people that you've looked up to right there. And everyone is more beautiful and taller and thinner in the form of women and shorter in the form of men that you ever probably thought they would be. But I mean, it's a very surreal experience and a very fun one, but it was more just like, oh my gosh, how cool for, you know, our director, Jorge, who had worked his whole like adult life on iterations of this film. Like it had started off as a Cal Arts project for him that then evolved into a script that then evolved into a different title. And it was pretty amazing, but we were able to get in a little farther than we should have been able to with some
I love that.
with some carefully chosen words. And then we were able to go to one of the big after parties that you hear about, and that was pretty amazing. But it's always just this feeling of like, wow, all the hard work is paid off, whether you're doing that or you're doing like a screening of your film like we did in Houston, where you're in a beautiful theater, or you're at a premiere where, you know, it's packed and people are excited and you're like, I can't believe all of these people are here to see this. And that feels really, really, really good. And, you know, I think a lot of us type A people like to see sort of that tangible reward. And for me, that's a very tangible thing where you can say like all of these, I mean, I guess it's like a lot of things. It's like building a building or doing any type of construction project. It starts off as nothing. And so to have nothing then turn into this thing that lives on forever is like a really cool feeling. I would say, okay, so I have the project we haven't announced yet that's about, I think it's going to be so interesting. It's about 2 memoirs and we're turning them into 1 movie. So I will hopefully be able to talk about that soon. And the book deals are done. We just haven't done all the formal crew deals. And then I have a documentary based on a French graphic novel called The Photographer, and working on that. We've been working on that for several years and presented it at IDFA, which is a documentary forum in Amsterdam last year. And then I have another project in baby stages of development, and then a dog project based on my love of my 2 dogs, Frank and Carl, that will hopefully give people insight into the crazy world of dog shows and dog competitive sports.
We did not get to touch on your love of dogs.
Isn't everyone luckier? Luckier for
look,
it,
we are going to drop in photos of these doggies in this episode because I know there's such a special aspect of your life as well. Okay, so you are in your free time that it seems like impossible that you have, but you are getting married now soon. So
yeah, I'm getting married in November in Mexico. Super excited about that. And he's a great guy and he supports my career and loves that I am super passionate about making, you know, films, and that I am crazy about my dog. So he's a 10 of 10, highly recommend.
On Rotten Tomatoes, 10 of 10.
Yes, he would be getting a full tomato meter. Yeah. Not a splat. He's for sure a tomato.
Well, congratulations to you. You are just, you know, you're one of my favorite people on this earth.
So sweet. And you too. I mean, it's not every day you get to be interviewed by your friend who also is the founder of her own company. So that's a wonderful.
It's special. Kincaid did something right. Many things wrong. Few things.
We need to get our alumni newsletter reports in. I feel like we got a lot.
Update class of 98 here. And now I'm going to hit up Bettina.
All right. So first of all, fascinating interview. I think that was amazing. I love that you guys have, you know, the history and all of that. But
that always makes it so fun.
But my whole thing is, and something that I want to just kind of like put out there, I'm fascinated with the way that Hollywood works. And how do you bring a film, you know, how do you bring a project to be, you know, picked up by a studio or whatever, because so many things have changed in Hollywood because of Netflix and Hulu and streaming and HBO and all of these things. You know, it's like you can't just, the old studio system isn't the way it used to be. So for her to be actually in this space and be able to bring things and help create things, I
Yeah.
think is fascinating.
No, and it is. So not only the role of a producer, it's not just one thing. It's kind of like us in this show. We not only film, but we also edit, that you're juggling a lot. And what I thought was cool in the interview is her talking about she fundraises. So she's not only
Right.
behind the scenes cutting everything, doing all the stuff to make it look seamless. And,
Right.
Edit it well.
You have to raise the money.
You have to raise the money to make the film.
We need money
And
for this show.
We need money.
In case anybody's watching.
We would love.
Just a couple of bucks.
We
we're
don't
in a-
even have notes today because we don't have a paper budget.
Yes,
and
we
I
don't
didn't
have a paper
pencil
budget.
sharpener.
Yeah,
okay?
we either
We're running on
it was
fumes, there's no coffee
I texted Margot. I said, "Do I need to pick up wine
Yeah.
or note cards?" And
Yeah.
she's like, "Wine."
replenish the supply.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
But even speaking of that, ironically, and I love that you queued that up. She talks about no job is too small in this role. So in fact, Katherine has been a server. She does actually there's food on set, right? You got to feed your
Craft services.
craft services.
Yeah.
She has been the one to
Catering.
actually cater. So that is why
Because she came up and
that's
did.
her
She
tenacity.
did every job
Everything
leading up
And
to the
that's
top.
That's what makes her so good, though, because my opinion is that if you're going to be this killer entrepreneur, you're going to take on this role in this creative vibe, you have to know all elements.
Yeah.
And so
especially now.
Especially now, because you don't know who's going to pair off or get busy, and pandemic's going to happen.
Well,
people don't.
You
show
have
up,
to.
whatever happens.
So it doesn't matter if you're creating content for social media, or if you are actually trying to get a documentary produced,
Yeah.
or a series for Netflix or whatever. You don't have these budgets anymore. You don't have the staff anymore. Everybody has to wear multiple hats, and you have to be able to jump in and whatever it takes to make this project happen. And I think that's the takeaway from that interview. I think is for maybe a younger person wanting to get into this business, it's this is kind of the real part of it.
Yes, and it's okay. It's not always going to be. I think if you want to get into that industry, you think, oh, so glam. It's always red carpet. No,
you're going to have to work your ass off.
And you're going to have to work your ass off.
Yeah.
And Katherine Harper has, and she also. I tried to lean into the fact that she's dominating in a male-dominated industry.
Which brings us to a theme.
But she said, you know what, I don't look at it as sex-based. I'm just a person that's creative and doing shit.
Best person for the job.
Doing something. Edit that. But
But it brings us to something we've talked about, manifesting the thing you want the best. And the thing you want the most. And also, right? And also,
the manifest.
Yeah, it should say 1-800-MANIFEST right there.
Wait, do an M.
But also, and the thing that makes me also really happy as the being a dad of a wonderful,
patriarch.
Wonderful girl that I love to death. I always love and championing the boss ladies of the world, and Katherine definitely out there, kicking some butt. So shout out to her, and of course thank you for taking time to do our little show.
Heck yeah. Well, she owes me because she kept me out too late when I visited her in Dallas, and her fiance, and they dropped me off in the wrong parking lot, so I tried to enter my
Get out of the
Denali,
car.
and it was locked. So I was like, you know what? I literally
This is
set
the
off a
wrong
car alarm.
car.
You owe
Nice.
me, Katherine.
Nice. All right, guys, next week we will see you again. We'll have another amazing episode. Thank you so much for being part of this. And please comment, share, do all that stuff. We're out of here. Peace. Love you.